समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
US President Donald Trump is under serious pressure from his own MAGA base, his own fan base on the H-1B visa program. This even after he's added a 100,000 application fee, announcing a major shift that has upset many here in India. But allies of the Trump administration are calling the H-1B visa program a scam and are asking for it to be completely shut down. They're also blasting US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick for making claims in the announcement to shift the policy on H-1B visas that weren't followed through. All of these developments are actually taking place even as Trump is getting set to meet again with the Pakistanis, this time the Pakistan Prime Minister, along with other Muslim and Arab leaders. It is said that Gaza is on the agenda, but given Trump's newfound love for Pakistan, India will be watching that meeting very closely. Trump will be addressing the United Nations later tonight. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. Foreign Minister Jay Shankar has met with Marco Rubio on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. But is this meeting, despite saying all the right things at the end of that meeting, going to really lead to a substantive thaw? Just when we thought things were getting better, after Trump dialed Prime Minister Modi on his birthday and trade talks resumed, came the second hit to India, the announcement of a major shift on the H-1B visa programs. Now come the clarifications that this is only a one-time sort of application fee that is not needed for every renewal. It doesn't apply to old applications and doctors might be exempt. But guess what? Trump is now under pressure from his own base. Allies like Steve Bannon are saying shut down the program completely. This even as Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in the United States for talks is talking about how America might be scared of Indian talent. All of this is taking place as Trump is scheduled to address the United Nations later today. In the United Nations, country after country have also stood up in recognition of the Palestinian state, something that India, of course, has done historically. In this context, it will be interesting to watch Trump's meeting with Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif alongside other leaders of the Arab world. This, of course, comes against the backdrop of the recent pact, the military alliance, NATO style, between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. There's a whole lot of geopolitical chaos and Trump has unleashed, if not all of it, a lot of it. What does this all mean for India? Let's introduce our very distinguished panel of experts today as we try and make sense of the world in the age of Trump. A. Marshall Kapoor is with us. Let's welcome him to the program. Good to see you, sir. Also joining us is veteran diplomat, Ambassador Navdeep Suri. Always a pleasure, sir. Welcome to the program. And also joining us is military veteran, General Rakesh Sharma. It's always a pleasure to have you. Before I come into what's going on between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, why Trump is meeting with Muslim nations, I think it's important to talk a little bit about what's happening between America and India, and the H-1B being the latest sort of provocation, if you see it as that. This is what Steve Bannon, who's a major voice on the right-wing base, a Trump ally, but blasting US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, had to say about the H-1B visa program, which, by the way, 70% of H-1B visas went to Indians last year. Take a look.
If not tomorrow, the H-1B. It's, just simple advice to the Secretary of Commerce. It's a scam. Let's just shut it down. It's within your power to go back to the president and take that proclamation you got that lays out all the in the first part of the proclamation. You make the case to shut it down, and then you don't shut it down. And what I'm going to do, because we've been so focused on Charlie's situation and the great speeches yesterday, that haven't had a chance to cut it. The Commerce Secretary who's kind of in charge of this area, in his description said, and this is why I said at the time, he said it's $100,000 per year for I think he was talking $600,000 coming at one HB, and I said, that's impossible. If you're going to do that, you got to shut the program down because that makes it so economically unfeasible. And of course, later, Caroline Leavitt had to come out and confirm, oh no, it's just $100,000 up front, which I said had to be the case. Well, the Secretary of Commerce, and then he said it was for renewables. It's not for renewals. Caroline Leavitt had to come and correct. Yo, dude, you're the Secretary of Commerce. These are not tiny details in the document. These are not in the footnotes. This is the deal.
All right, I want to start with Ambassador Suri. We'll get to what's going on between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, why Trump is meeting with leaders of the Muslim world in a moment. But let's take 2 minutes to talk about what's happening between India and the United States of America. Now, you see Trump there being blasted, and certainly the Commerce Secretary being blasted by his own fan base, his own allies. Bannon there saying scrap the program. What's actually going on? What's your read, the larger read on the Indo-US equation?
Barkha, it gives me great joy to see Steve Bannon and Howard Lutnick at each other's throats. One is a white supremacist, the other is a tariff fundamentalist or a trade fundamentalist. And to see them at each other is quite a pleasant sight. Let them figure out where they want the dust to settle on this. Because, somewhere between the white supremacists who want a white America, they've forgotten people like Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai or even Elon Musk, who came on H-1B visas and contributed to the American economy. For us, in terms of our bilateral relationship, I think it is one more hurdle that has been put in the path. And I have to say that this one, although has been brewing for quite a while, even during the election campaign, people like Steve Bannon and others had been speaking. Remember that one of Trump's key planks was anti-immigration. And that anti-immigration is not just the illegal immigration. There was that whole tug of war between Elon Musk and the technology guys who supported Trump and the nativists who want no immigration ideally, or very, very selective immigration. It complicates Minister Piyush Goyal's task as he heads for Washington for the trade talks, because in our trade negotiations with other countries in Europe and elsewhere, we have been making mobility of professionals as an integral part of our plank. Look, there is no doubt that the relationship is going through an unexpectedly difficult phase at this point of time. And much though we would like to, it's hard to point a finger at ourselves on this. We aren't the only ones at the receiving end of a maverick and unpredictable president. From Japan to Brazil, from continent to continent, you have responsible leaders struggling to figure out how to deal with this phenomenon in the White House. And I think countries that are large, which have a degree of self-respect, a certain degree of strategic autonomy, will have to draw the line as we are trying to, and not given to the daily vituperations of the White House on a range of issues. And it's a relationship, I think, that whether it is Dr. Jaishankar, Prime Minister Modi, Minister Piyush Goyal, will have to manage for the next many months to come.
Yeah, I mean, unless he loses the midterms, it's another 3 years. We're actually talking about being at the receiving end of Trump's vagaries. General Sharma, Ambassador makes the point that we're not the only ones. The world is sort of, set into a kind of churn. That said, we're the only ones perhaps with very unique security challenges, right? We have Pakistan, with whom there's a kind of creeping newfound closeness between Trump and the Pakistanis, whether because of business interests or whether because they flattered him. We have the Chinese, with whom we have gingerly reopened sort of our door, but we know that China basically patronizes and looks after Pakistan. We have the Pakistanis making a security pact with the Saudis, and we'll come to that in more detail later in the program. We don't know the future of the Quad, right? We have this sort of economic onslaught from the Americans, and we have the Chinese attempt to dominate our markets. So these are uniquely challenging situations for India.
Ambassador Suri has said, these are one of the toughest times that we are going through in our relationships across the world. And, it has to be seen through as how times will progress. President Trump's last 6-7 months with us, especially after Op Sindoor, have been very tough on us, whether it's matter of tariff, it's matter of now H-1B, and the relationship that he has, the warmth, the newfound warmth that he has with Pakistan. So in any which way, the relationship with the United States partnership means simple, that, we have to, the country who wants to be a partner of the United States have to follow the vagaries and the thought process of the United States, which actually is not possible. We have our own national interest, we have our own standing, we have own desires to move ahead internally and externally. So it can't be said that you have to follow what the Americans want us to do so. So therefore, there is a diversion of opinions, and we have to stand by that. You said rightly about China. China, I won't say the newfound love, but we are wanting to make a thaw at least on the economic and trade issues, and partly geopolitically, understanding very well that geostrategically or on the borders, things are not going to ease out for quite some time. So we have now probably separated the two things, the two issues in some form, and want to have relationships. And what we have with Pakistan, Op Sindoor. So we are in a tough time. A neighborhood is also in tough turmoil. We know what's happened to Nepal. We know what's happened to Bangladesh. So I think this is not a time for noting sheets and minute sheets. This is a time to be on the ball and stand on and take on issue daily basis. It's not, it can't be procrastinated for longer times. And I agree, this visit of Minister Piyush Goyal is very important. It would make a substantive difference as to whether we have something called early harvest here, or we go back into some kind of cold storage for discussions on trade issues, or do we succumb to, say, corn or something like that. So I think we are getting through tough times here.
Yeah. Marshal Kapoor, one of the points that you've made is also a point I keep making every day. Where is the much wanted Indian American community? Where is it? It's often been called a model community. Most of the sort of biggest names heading these technology firms that by the way, use up most of the H-1B visas are actually today helmed by Indians, by actually first generation Indians who are now American citizens. And yet we don't actually see them entering this conversation at all. They've not been able to at least overtly leverage any sort of advantage for India. How do you see their role?
Good evening, Barkha, and good evening to fellow panelists. This is a point which I was making with you the other day at India Habitat Center. In my personal opinion, most of them have studied in our subsidized Indian Institute of Technologies and other tech institutions and colleges and migrated abroad. When Prime Minister Modi visited America last many years, a few visits which he's had a huge shows in which this community came and said India, India, and assured that if there is anything for this country, we are willing to do. And like you mentioned, the Indian origin Americans are placed at the top notch of this country. They are the best in each field, top CEOs, doctors, surgeons, NASA scientists. In Republican Party, we have large number of people of Indian origin, both as the spouses and as the main people. But when it comes to collective voice, and in my tweets also, which we were mentioning the other day, had it been the Chinese, had it been the Israelis, or had it been even the Pakistanis in a similar situation like India today, their community would have come together and as a collective voice put across the cause of the nation. So this is the first point which I make, and they have a very strong voice. In my opinion, there's a huge base in the Republican Party in America, and the table of the top tech heads had a lot of Indian origin people seated there. Many of them who have gone on H-1B visa. So, but I'm sure, considering his temperament, considering the present situation, Probably nobody wants to rock the boat, and they're waiting for some sort of a this thing to collectively put across. But in my opinion, they have to stand up and speak.
Well, they haven't so far, unless they're speaking very silently in the shadows and leveraging some shift. We don't know. Master Suri, I want one comment from you on this visa issue before we move on to what Trump might be doing at the United Nations. Do you believe that we should be expending diplomatic capital on it? And let me put forth a cynical theory. Many of the people who use the H-1B and go abroad eventually are looking to settle down in the United States of America, maybe even eventually. Not everybody does it, but a large majority of them do seek American citizenship. In the end, as somebody else was saying on my program yesterday, they're American citizens. How overly bothered can we get about it? Is Trump maybe using this as a negotiating tactic for, in fact, the trade talks that are yet to reach fruition? How do you see it? How involved should we be on this? The MEA did issue a statement talking about humanitarian consequences, but how do you see it?
So, Barkha, firstly, the H-1B visa holders are not American citizens. They are still Indian passport holders. They are still Indian citizens.
I know, but it's kind of like an en route.
They're not even they don't even have a green card yet.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Fair.
So they are on a fairly precarious, to that extent, wicket. And while the numbers annually may be about 60, 70,000, but cumulatively, you're talking about over 650,000 Indians. So we have seen anywhere in the world when Indian nationals get into some kind of trouble, the government of India does intercede to the best of its ability, whether it is rescuing them from Yemen or now leaning on their behalf on the H-1B visa issue. The second point, I think, is a little bit more complicated. I think if we go back to the 80s and 90s, we used to think that this is brain drain. And then somewhere along the path, we started saying, no, this is actually a brain bank. Because if you look at many of the leading Indian companies in IT, in healthcare, and so on, they've actually been established by Indians who came back from the United States with the management systems and technologies and other aspects. You can look at Apollo Hospitals, Infosys, whatever else that you want to, and trace the US connection in each of these major institutions. And the third, I think, is, I think it's Trump's policies that will drive back some of this talent towards India. I was talking to a major biotechnology startup a few days back, and they said the kind of resumes that are getting from PhDs and postdoctoral scholars, simply because funding to those institutions has been cut. And I think the real substantive issue for us as a country and for government of India and the state governments at this point is, how do we create an ecosystem that pays for these people to come back to India with the advanced technical and other education that they have? Think what has China done to attract these back. Don't let your sarkari salaries be a constraint. Think out of the box. Use the major research fund that has been established to create a platform where these folks can come back and integrate into many of our leading companies. I really think that to that extent, Trump's policies can be a window of opportunity for us unwittingly, and let it be America's loss.
Yeah, I do agree. If there was any moment to incentivize sort of India continuing to be home for the best minds, it is now. I want to open this debate on to there's so much happening, it's actually tough to keep track. Trump is going to be addressing the United Nations General Assembly. He's also going to be meeting with the Pakistani Prime Minister as well as other leaders of the Arab world. And is Gaza on the agenda? This is a very important question in the backdrop of the pact between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. It's been likened to a NATO-style pact because of a clause that says an attack on one country will be considered an attack on both countries, which is same as Article 5 in NATO. Let me play out what the White House said about this meeting, and then we'll open it up for conversation.
The president will also later in the day hold a multilateral meeting with Qatar, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, the UAE, and Jordan. After these important meetings, the president will attend a reception tomorrow night with more than 100 world leaders before returning to Washington, D.C. On Thursday, here at the White House, President Trump will welcome.
Okay, let me actually start with General Sharma, then come to Ambassador, and then Air Marshal. General Sharma, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia pact. Now all of them together going to meet with Donald Trump. In many ways, a lot of people feel, and I'm sure Navdeep sir will also weigh in, that this pact was a signal more to Israel and the United States of America, because the US didn't really protect Qatar from aggression from Israel. All of this is also coinciding with France, UK, Canada being countries that recognize Palestine to be a state, to be a legitimate state. How are you looking at this from a security lens?
So, Barkha, I don't think such, and it's not a pact, it's an agreement. The agreements come across in a couple of days. Such agreements would have been thrashed over months by the diplomats over a period of time before you came down to signing this agreement as it was signed. So while the relationship seems to be, the catalyst seems to be the Israeli bombing in Qatar, but actually fact of the matter is that it would have been in the offing for quite some time, and it came across here. Why did they require a pact like this? What's the aim like? What's the forward movement against? What is this so-called agreement aimed as? Now, Pakistanis have been involved into Saudi Arabia and this in the region for quite some time. They were in Jordan earlier, including militarily. Rahil Sharif was leading the contingent on the east, Yemen East, the combined force, which Pakistanis did not subscribe to. And then, if you see in a measure of things, which military in the Middle East is worth the name to come and join up, including Saudis, to help out Pakistanis, and Pakistanis need help. 3-4 militaries that you see, Saudi Arabia, there is Egypt partly, which is something to reckon with, and there's nothing much to talk home about, and of course Iran, which has now been hit here. So none of these militaries are worth the name. So you say Article 5 of NATO replayed out here in this agreement. I don't think Pakistanis will get much of a support from either Saudis or for Egyptians or for anybody else for that matter, despite the fact that the total military in the GCC countries is about 4 lakh odd people, and the budget goes to over $100 odd billion, or at least 20 times more than what the Pakistani defense budget is. But despite the fact all that, there is not much of a military that Pakistanis will get a support of. So what's the aim of this agreement? No, actually, it's all murky, and you cannot say so whether it is tailored against Israel. It's certainly not tailored against India, because to expect that the GCC countries, now Saudis are part of GCC, to sign an agreement of this kind with Pakistan also gets GCC invariably involved into this game. So I don't think it is against India in any case. Is it against Israel? Or let me make a guess here, or a conjecture. I think the United States is finding it very difficult to control the doings of the Israelis and the way Israelis are going ahead in Gaza or even in Qatar for that matter. And therefore, they would have given the blessings, because both the Saudis and the Pakistanis have great relationship with the United States. I am personally sure that they would have spoken to the United States that we are going across with this agreement.
So you're saying, so you are actually saying that this alliance or agreement is with the blessings, or at least covert blessings, of the White House, and not some sort of messaging to the United States of America. I want to bring in Ambassador Suri and then Air Marshal Kapoor. This is your beat, Ambassador. This is an area like the back of your hand. I want to bring in a question from our audience. Prasad Duvuri says, Barkha DJT, Donald J. Trump, is very upset with Netanyahu's heavy-handedness and has stated it privately. The meeting with Islamic nations in New York today is a message to Netanyahu of his patience tapering out. This sort of fits in with what General Sharma is saying, that maybe all of this has happened with American blessings. Do Do you see it like that? Because you see, what it's also done is it's emboldened Pakistani rhetoric. So you've got Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif standing up and saying, "Arey, of course it means tomorrow if there's a war with India, Saudi Arabia's troops will be fighting alongside us." Now, we may choose to ignore that, but it has emboldened Pakistan. Do you believe it has happened with Donald Trump's blessings?
Look, I think let's look at the facts instead of speculation. Yes, there was the CENTCOM chief in Riyadh around the time that this announcement was made. And I think that gives rise to a reasonable speculation that that it had their blessings in some form or another. But Barkha, I want to caution against looking at everything that's happening through an India prism. Sometimes it's better for us to ignore it, because by making too much of it, we play into Pakistan's hands. They want to spook us with this, and we are getting spooked by it. Firstly, the meeting in New York today has been sought by the GCC countries for two objectives, as I see it. One, to place on record to Trump their disquiet over the Israeli attack on Doha, and to really see what are the US security guarantees worth. The second is Gaza, and to say that, is this going to continue, or is there a plan to deal with the situation in Gaza? Because you can see the fallout happening in places like Egypt, in Jordan, in other places where publics have started to question their leadership. So I was in Cairo a couple of weeks back, and there is real sense of unease that if Netanyahu were somehow to force these hapless Palestinians across the fence at Rafah into Sinai, what does it mean for Egypt in terms of a country being destabilized? So there's a lot that the Arab countries have at stake post the Qatar strike and and in the context of Gaza, that is far more important than us inserting ourselves into that equation. And in that particular conversation, Pakistan is a player amongst 10 or 12 different countries. Second, on the pact itself, or the agreement that has been announced, honestly, I do not foresee any scenario where the Saudis will lift a finger against India. It would go against the grain of everything that we know and understand, and of the investment that we have made in our relationship. You know, if you talk to our agencies, they will tell you that Saudis and Emiratis are our two closest security partners at this point of time in terms of counterterrorism and so on. So let us not get spooked by raising these concerns, particularly with the Saudis. Whatever should be done discreetly. It should be done quietly, outside the glare of media. And let us stop seeing each relationship as a zero-sum game. We have a very good relationship now with the Saudis, with the Emiratis, with other Gulf countries. That doesn't mean that Pakistan's relationship with those countries has stopped.
But may I ask you if indeed this is about, you said Pakistan is one of the countries that is entitled to a sort of view or a intervention on what happens in Gaza. The fact is that as country after country in the West is lining up today to recognize that Palestine has the two-state theory, India has historically been among the first countries to actually recognize the right of the Palestinian people to their own country. Why are we not a stakeholder in this conversation? Why is it a Muslim conversation? Why is it a conversation only with Muslim countries? That's my question.
Yeah. The Europeans have also had that conversation with the Americans and continue to have that conversation to see whether there's a way to persuade Trump to see reason and to also highlight the dangers of an unchecked Netanyahu government going on the rampage that it is, and the serious damage that it is causing long-term to Israel, to the United States, and the destabilization in the region. I guess what I wanted to say was, if you look at what's transpired in the last week, has there been a word out of the Saudis? Every statement has come from the Pakistanis, right?
Yeah.
They are the ones talking about, defense of one, attack on one on the other. They are the ones who are talking about the nuclear umbrella, etc., etc. Why do we have to take everything that they say at face value? Why aren't we subject to the same level of skepticism with which we would question their normal statements? I think they are playing it up for their own good reasons, and we are getting spooked by it. We shouldn't. Let them keep saying what they want. I would be concerned if the Saudis said something which was serious, and they haven't.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. But Emma Kapoor, if I can bring you in, you do have, again, Pakistanis, Hussein Haqqani, former Pakistan ambassador to the US, saying, oh, this will allow Pakistan to purchase US weapons with Saudi funds. I mean, that's the claim he's made. You have General Sharma believing that the Americans have some sort of hand on head allowing this agreement to take place. So, but Ambassador Suri is saying, listen, everything's not about us. Some things are on a parallel track. They're not directly linked to us. Is that how you see it?
Before I answer your question, I recall a story which my grandmother in Amritsar used to narrate when I was a young kid. There was a traveler who used to come from far land in a boat, and he used to tell everybody in that small island that a huge storm is coming and everything will go away. So the poor, island people used to rush to him, tell us what to do. So he used to sell them umbrellas, he used to sell them things, which he had brought on his boat. So he used to narrate a story wherein, fear is, and this is exactly what America is doing today. They are building up a scenario where everybody in the Gulf country is scared. These actions by Israel over Qatar, these actions of unilateral, Israel has today stuck 6 countries in the last 2 years, from 7th October 23 till now, is going to be 2 years. 6 countries have been taken, and nobody thought ever, considering the previous wars which Israel has fought, that this will last so long. Now there are a vested interest everywhere. The Americans, of course, will spook and sell their arms to everybody in the Gulf or the Middle East, and this is my take on the whole story. Second, I do not rule out Gaza because if you recall, in his election campaign, including Greenland, Canada, President Trump did mention Gaza. So rebuilding Gaza and making it state of the art kind of a place to live in, where it will be like Mediterranean coast where people can come and enjoy, is one of the big ploys. And when by the Chinese brick and road initiatives, it must be on the agenda and somehow to bring. Now, specifically coming to your question between Saudi and Pakistan pact, this, in my opinion, everything in our neighborhood is for sale. So what has happened is that with this strike, which obviously must have been with American blessings over the Hamas people in Qatar, the Saudis and the neighborhood, the Gulf region, would have got spooked. Now, what has happened is, in this region, only Pakistan has nuclear weapons. So Pakistan would have offered that we will provide you with a nuclear umbrella, and $6 billion is what I was reading, was the first tranche which the Saudis, Now, it is a saying whether this $6 billion which the Pakistanis get would be utilized to buy weapons or for the humanitarian aid, I'm not sure. But this money, certainly if it comes through, would be put against our, and this everybody would know. And what will they do? They'll again buy American weapons with this money. So in effect, the money is channeling from Saudi Arabia through Pakistan and going to US to buy weapons. So this is my take on it.
All right. Let me get General Sharma and then give Ambassador Suri the last word. General Sharma, do you see it that way? Ambassador Suri says he doesn't foresee a situation where the Saudis would join ranks with the Pakistanis in any military context. But are there unintended benefits from Pakistan beyond rhetoric? For example, having new funds, as Hussein Haqqani argues. What do you say, General Sharma?
So, Barkha, if you say unintended consequences, Pakistan are reaping unintended consequences from that time they started the Blitzkrieg on Op Sindoor, and what they have been talking all over. The day this pact was being signed, Khalid Kidwai was taking a press conference same day in Islamabad, and he made a lot of noise about the tail fins of these aircraft which were downed, etc., etc. So the Pakistanis are taking a credit and advantage. Now they're saying Shehbaz Sharif is leading the delegation of these six Muslim countries to meet. There is no leader in this meeting, as it is what has been stated by the Americans. But the advantage is being taken, and we, as Ambassador rightly pointed out, are taken into the words, and we follow the words of the Pakistanis, what they are talking. I think we should forget about what Pakistan is doing and whether they are meeting whoever they are wanting to meet. We have to actually focus ourselves. Let me put it this way, that Chinese are in a big way in Saudi Arabia. So what Pakistanis are doing with Saudi Arabia is also, there is a Chinese link, and it cannot be forgotten in any which way. So there may be an advantage that the Saudi money will be conducted also across to China for whatever assistance. Now the Pakistanis are wanting HQ-29s or whatever they may call it. Let me end by saying here that we have a difficult proposition, and there is no answer to credible hard power. This decade, the third decade of this century, has been very tough on most of these countries. And if you see what's happened from 2020 onwards, we have been at the receiving end, and we have to focus ourselves to create that credible strength, so that we are able to stand on our feet and do not mind what Pakistan is talking and signing pacts or agreements or whatever they want to do, and what President Trump is doing. I'll end with one issue here. Look, H-1B, the ambassador has been very kindly brought out all the issues here. But there are 1,700 odd global capability centers with millions of Indians employed in India who are working for largely 60-70% are working for Americans, maybe Google or Amazon. All these global capability centers are located in Hyderabad, Bengaluru, etc. And now today, as you recollect, there is a meeting being held which says that we should create our own big four. And why should we follow KPMG and Deloitte and all the other ones? Sure. So I think we need to pull up our socks. We need to establish our own global capability centers. Why should we make a noise that there is IIM Ahmedabad finds one fellow going to America with 1.1 crores. He can't go now because H-1B is gone away. But the fact of the matter is, we create our own global capability centers to provide whatever the world wants as assistance, which as it is we are doing, but we are doing on behalf of the multinational corporations. Let's pull up our socks and said, okay, we will compete with all these at our own level with the same kind of path that we can put across there.
Yeah, Ambassador Suri, I'll give you the last word. I do take the point that General Sharma made, that there is no credible alternative to hard power. The fact is that that's what, almost isolated Israel is doing. It is actually putting on a display of hard power, alienating, many sort of countries along the way, but that's what it's doing. I'm not at all recommending that that's our role model. I'm simply making a larger point. The Chinese, why do they get away with what they do get away with? It's hard power, and I think that's the point that General Sharma is making. We've always sort of said we want the hard power, but we have all this great soft power, that our diaspora is our soft power. Our diaspora hasn't been able to shift the discourse. There's in fact horribly mounting racism in America today against Indian Americans and Trump's administration is full of them, from his FBI director to so many others. So last word to you.
So Barkha, I totally agree with the proposition that we need to develop our hard power. We need to grow our military strength, and the sooner we do it, the better. But meanwhile, while that is a process of its own, I would say that, look, we have invested in terms of our relationships in multiple parts of the globe. In the Gulf in particular, since we started the conversation with the Saudis and the others, Prime Minister Modi's been to UAE 7 times. The kind of relationships that we have forged with them, we saw how this came up to our support on issues that really mattered, on Article 370, on OIC, etc. And let's not forget that we've made those investments. And today, countries that we had generally perceived to be in the pro-Pakistan camp, or where Pakistan could leverage the Ummah card, are not available to it in the same in the same fashion. So we must continue our relationships with the Arab world the way we have invested in it. But at the same time, on the hard power issue, I recognize the contribution that Israel, through its technologies, has made to Indian hard power. But somewhere we need to regain that balance. Yes, we were the original proponents of the Palestinian cause, but also, yes, our positions have been watered down in the last 3 or 4 years. We have abstained on resolutions that were fairly unexceptionable in some ways because we did not want to annoy Israel. We then came into the small minority of 8 or 10 or 12 countries that were not taking a position on a fundamental issue like Palestinian rights because we did not want to annoy Israel. So I think somewhere we need to find again that balance that we traditionally had. We always spoke about our opposition to hyphenation. We need to go back to that basics. We want to de-hyphenate from Pakistan, and we again want to de-hyphenate Israel from Palestinians so that our relationship with both Israel and the Palestinians can stand on equal and balanced planks and not put us in a position where today we are seen as blatantly pro-Israel. So I think there's a fine line in diplomacy in terms of how you balance things, and we need to perhaps regain that balance for our own longer-term self-interest.
Well, I think that's a very interesting point, and that's what I was trying to ask you. That as the original supporter of the rights of the Palestinian people to a Palestinian state, why aren't we in this global conversation, in this moment of global shift? And I think diplomacy is the art of finding that balance. There are many who say that India had invested far too much capital with the Americans, and that led to a tilt, and we're now finding our way back to that walk in the center. We leave it there. Thank you very much. It's going to be interesting to see what Trump says, what happens in this meeting, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk to all of you again and learn from all of you. Thank you, Ambassador Suri, to General Sharma, and to Himashul Kapoor. Always a pleasure. Thank you. See you soon.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voter Story and support independent, robust journalism.